I'm Sean Krenkel. I am the studio director at Night School Studio.
So, Sean, talk about what lessons you learned from the first Oxenfree that you brought with you and improved in the sequel.
I mean, there's so many. There's so many pain points. So at the highest level, I would say that we learned that the special thing from the first game was actually the world and the challenges we threw at the player, and it wasn't about specifically the player character from the first one. So as much as we love Alex, as much as we spent all that time with Alex, we also wanted to tell a new story in this new world. And having some time away from the first game let us kind of dig back into the fiction. But going deeper, I think like at a writing level, we wanted to change our approach to how you explored the world. And so instead of just talking to people in front of you, now you've got a walkie-talkie. So the walkie-talkie lets you have asynchronous discussions with people all over Kamina, which now makes you explore the world differently. Also, the way that you explore the map is totally different. It's very player-driven, whereas the first one, I think we kind of dragged you through these different scenes. Now you actually get to explore in different ways. And then finally, I just think like the art style from the first game, we actually early on tried to experiment with some new approaches, but we decided to fall back into what made the first one so beautiful and then like plus that up. So there's more motion, there's more depth, there's more sort of elements happening that the first one is very much a flat matte painting, and this one is like a living kind of breathing environment.
I think the last time I've talked to you in your studio was like almost 6 or 7 years ago. Since then, you kind of got acquired by Netflix. What has that opened up for your studio and your team?
Kind of got acquired, yes. So yes, it's been a minute. Good to see you. It's been interesting because it's almost like they just stuck a battery in our back for the things that we already wanted to do. So I don't think things have changed in terms of our creative approach, but now, areas where previously we were only working with a contractor or a vendor, now we hired great, graphics engineers and UX artists and hired a lot of the types of roles that we couldn't previously hire for. Another thing is just like, we can now put this game out globally in a way that we couldn't before. So we're translating Oxenfree 1 into 30 languages. We're launching this one in over 30 languages. So that's just stuff as an indie studio that you can't do, And the other piece of that is that we have access to all these other resources inside of Netflix that are traditionally TV and film resources, but now we cut trailers with the people who work on the TV shows, or we have these great recording facilities, like all these things that we just didn't have access to previously, we do now. But at the end of the day, we haven't changed, I don't think, in terms of our approach or our strategy or what our creative vision is.
So they acquired you, but they still let you do your thing that you've always done, but having more money is helpful.
It doesn't hurt, exactly. Like we have more space, some more resources, but they got us to continue to do what we do. They have no interest in chopping us up and distributing us out through the rest of Netflix or something. They really want us to stay autonomous because they saw the value in our approach to storytelling.
But last time I spoke to you guys were, a very small team, penny pinching, like you said, you're contracting out stuff. Now, you did mention a lot of stuff that opens up to you, like localization, different languages, bigger budgets. But like, what was that moment for you when because it's ultimately up to you if you sell or not. What was that moment like for you personally?
It was a long process, not to jump in with Netflix, but to decide if we ever would want to do it, right? Like I had talked to a bunch of different places in the prior 3 or 4 years, but it was always a little bit of a weird mismatch. Like either the other company didn't have the same vision as us, or it felt like they wanted to just have us handle some other IP, or, it wasn't the perfect fit. And with Netflix, what was interesting was I wasn't talking to them about an acquisition at all. We had been talking about working on a couple of different games and licensing our existing games to the platform for about 3 to 6 months before we got to these talks of actually joining Netflix. And so what was cool with that was I actually really knew the core team there for about half a year and was like, wow, I believe in their approach. I believe in their vision. The Venn diagram of how they approach storytelling and where they see the platform going and the types of things that we build and where we go, it's kind of like a circle. Like it was actually a very good overlap. And so making the decision was not something, we would do quickly. But how has it felt personally? I mean, the biggest one, honestly, is just like the ebbs and flows of being independent. It now is so nice to know that we don't have to worry about every 3 or 4 months, like, quick, put the game on sale over here, or oh, quick, take a contract gig, or do this or do that. Like, I enjoy that. Honestly, I like the entrepreneurial vibe, but I enjoy a lot more just focusing on the creative and having the team make great work.
Now, you guys, since you guys are acquired by Netflix, like your games really lend themselves well to storytelling. Like, Are you guys in talks about doing like an animated series or a Netflix series with your IP? Because you guys have a couple games that would really lend itself well in that space.
Yeah, so for both Oxenfree and for After Party, we are in the early phases of trying to develop those. There you go, yeah. Yeah.
I know you got drunk with Satan, that's what I remembered.
You're too drunk to remember the name, that's good. Yeah, man, like that's one of the most exciting things, although also one of the earliest things. But inside of Netflix, one of the things that's been so thrilling is to see how much they promote these different divisions working together. Most other big companies, including the ones that I had worked at before, everything's really siloed, and it's almost like they're just different companies. Like if you work in games and that's the film team over there, you don't talk. But here, if you're not collaborating and kind of crossing over and trying to find ways to make new stuff, you're not doing it right. So at Netflix, like I've already been, working with a couple different teams there to start to develop what that could look like. So yes, nothing to like actually announce yet, but it feels real, not like Hollywood BS that gets stuck in limbo forever.
Now, your team is very small. Do you still have that mentality of like kind of metaphorically leaning your chair back and say, hey, can we switch this? Can we fix this? Can we try this? Or is there more approval processes now?
There's actually not really. It's almost a little scary to tell you the truth. One of the things that I wanted to make sure was that like if we were to join, that the relationship would be such that both sides were more of just like plussing each other. So how can we plus Netflix up and how can they plus us? And that wouldn't be like gates of approvals and gates of, we need to look at this and make sure it checks off 16 different corporate boxes. So the relationship actually has been, they look to us and go, how do we help you do what you do, but better? And that may be as simple as, hey, bring in a design consultant to help out with this, or that may be, we need a little bit more budget for this, or that may be, we want more time on that, or we want more exploration space for this. That's basically it. But there's not really been any new gates and checks and approvals that would feel like a pain point. Honestly, way less than working with a traditional publisher, for sure.
So then what's development been like with Oxenfree 2? It sounds like you've just been doing your thing that you've always done, but you just have a little bit more resources.
That's a lot of it. Yeah, I mean, it took a little longer than we had hoped, but that's because we took on more than we always intended to. Exactly. It was definitely a process. I mean, like the things like I mentioned about, localization is a big one. Launching on this many platforms at once is a big one. We usually sort of try to stagger that. So I think at the end of the day, though, the process of building it has very much been the same because we brought back, there were a couple folks who had left, like Heather Gross, who was the lead artist in the first one. She's back working on this one with the current lead artist. Her name is Beverly Chen. And so we kind of got the band back together and like came from a very similar creative space. Process is the same. The pandemic was the weirdest part. Like working distributed was a weirder thing. But other than that, it feels very similar.
I mean, kind of explain to people out there, like making games that you want to make is a passion, but also it's a business because otherwise you'll be on the street, but you made your game, but you don't want to be on the street. You want to support your family and your friends and your employees.
Yes, I mean, that's the biggest thing for us is like, how do we come up with an idea that feels broadly appealing, yet is very personal to us? And that's what we've done with every game. Like, we don't sit around focus testing them to death. We come from a place that is like, does this thing seem like it could land with a lot of other people? But at the end of the day, when we're making it, we kind of make it for ourselves and just hope that others love it. And so, yeah, we would never get so esoteric, though, as to try to greenlight something that is so just for us that, yeah, you're not going to succeed. So we want to make sure it's broadly appealing, but with our touch,
So when does Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals come out? What platforms will be available at launch?
Yeah, so Oxenfree 2 will be out on July 12th, which is like right around the corner. I know we're coming in. We're landing that plane, and it's going to be on PlayStation, Switch, PC, and on Netflix.
And last for a fun question is, now any plans for the future after Oxenfree 2? Anything you're working on now you can talk about? Any ideas you have in the future that you really want to get down and out there?
We don't have anything to share yet, but yes, there are definitely some ideas in the works. I mean, I think especially for the Oxenfree, the core team that's still working on that right now, they're so laser focused on getting it out the door that we haven't done a bunch of exploration yet. But there's a really cool idea that we're pretty hyped for, so we'll be starting that in the coming months.